One half. I am 32 male, have always been cautious with relationships, especially after growing up watching my parents' messy divorce. My father fought tooth and nail to keep the house he'd worked decades to buy, and that lesson stuck with me. Protect what's yours. Still, I never imagined I'd end up in a similar situation. But here I am. I met her, let's call her Elle, 2 years ago at a friend's barbecue. She was gorgeous, smart, and had a magnetic personality. It didn't take long before we were inseparable. We moved in together after 6 months, and things seemed perfect for a while. It wasn't until a year into living together that I started noticing small red flags. Elle would make comments about how she could really make this place hers, or joke about finally having her dream house whenever we talked about home improvements. At first, I didn't think much of it, but over time, her jokes turned into suggestions, and her suggestions turned into demands. I bought my house 5 years before I met her. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. I worked 2 jobs to save for the down payment and spent weekends renovating it. Every inch of that house was a testament to my hard work. Elle started pressuring me to put her name on the deed after we'd been together for about a year and a half. She said it was about security and showing commitment. I pushed back, explaining that the house was a pre-existing asset and that, marriage or not, it would remain in my name. She didn't like that answer. The conversations turned into arguments, and she started accusing me of not trusting her. I tried to reassure her that my reluctance had nothing to do with trust and everything to do with protecting what I'd worked for. But she wasn't having it. One day, she escalated things. I came home from work to find her sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. She had a notary and 2 witnesses, her sister and her best friend, ready to make it official. She handed me the documents and told me, in the sweetest tone, that all I needed to do was sign, and we'd finally be a real team. I looked at the papers. It wasn't just adding her name to the deed. It was transferring 50% ownership of the house to her. I put the papers down and said, "Absolutely not." Her face changed in an instant. The sweetness vanished, replaced by a look I'd never seen before, cold and calculating. She accused me of being selfish and manipulative, claiming I was using her by letting her live in a house she had no claim to. The witnesses awkwardly excused themselves, and the notary packed up and left. Elle and I argued late into the night. She said things that cut deep, questioning my love for her and accusing me of planning to leave her high and dry. I told her I didn't appreciate the ambush, and that if she truly cared about me, she wouldn't try to manipulate me into giving her half my house. That night, I slept on the couch. The next morning, she was gone. For a few days, I thought that was the end of it. But then the letters started arriving, legal letters. It turned out Elle wasn't done. She hired a lawyer and filed a claim, arguing that she had contributed to the household and was entitled to a share of the property. Her argument hinged on the fact that she had paid for groceries and utilities while living with me. I immediately contacted a lawyer. He reassured me that her claims were weak. California, where I live, doesn't recognize common law marriage. And since we weren't married and she didn't contribute to the down payment or mortgage, she had no legal claim to the house. Still, the legal battle dragged on for months. Elle's lawyer tried every angle, claiming we had a verbal agreement, that she had made significant improvements to the property, and even that she had a right to compensation for emotional labor. Each claim was more ridiculous than the last, but I had to respond to every one of them. In the meantime, Elle started a smear campaign. She told mutual friends that I had used her, that I was a manipulative narcissist, and that she was the victim. Some friends believed her. Others saw through her lies. But then came the turning point. One day, my lawyer called me with some interesting news. During discovery, they found evidence that Elle had been planning this for months. Emails and texts showed her talking to her sister and best friend about how she was going to secure her future by getting me to sign over the house. She even joked about how easy it would be to convince me because I was too nice and too trusting. This revelation was a game changer. Not only did it destroy her legal claims, but it also gave me grounds to countersue for harassment and defamation. My lawyer filed the countersuit immediately. When Elle was served, she showed up at my house in tears, begging me to drop the lawsuit. She claimed she was just scared and didn't mean to hurt me. but I wasn't buying it. I told her that her actions had consequences and that I was done being manipulated. Then I closed the door in her face. The court case ended in my favor. Not only was her claim to the house dismissed, but she was also ordered to pay my legal fees and damages for defamation. It wasn't a huge sum, but it was enough to make her think twice about trying something like this again. As for me, I've learned my lesson. Love is important, but so is protecting yourself. Trust is earned, not given blindly. If you've made it this far, thanks for reading. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, remember, stand your ground. And hey, subscribe for more wild stories. You never know what life's going to throw at you. The aftermath of the case left me with a mixture of relief and anger. Relief because my house, the one thing I'd fought so hard for, was safe. Anger because I had trusted someone who turned out to be willing to manipulate and betray me for her own gain. After the court ruling, I thought Elle would slink away quietly. Instead, she doubled down on her smear campaign. She posted cryptic messages on social media about how some men pretend to love you but are just using you. She even hinted that I had been abusive, which was a blatant lie. For a while, I ignored it. But then, one day, a mutual friend sent me screenshots of her latest posts. She had gone so far as to tag me in a post accusing me of financial abuse and stealing her dream. That was the last straw. My lawyer advised me to take legal action again, this time for defamation and harassment. But instead of just filing another lawsuit, I decided to take matters into my own hands, legally and tactically. I started gathering every piece of evidence I had: text messages, emails, photos, and even voice recordings from our arguments, which I had started keeping during the legal battle. With my lawyer's guidance, I compiled everything into a dossier that painted a clear picture of her manipulative behavior. Then I took it one step further. I reached out to some of the mutual friends who had believed her lies. I calmly presented the evidence, explaining the situation from my perspective. Most of them were shocked, and a few even apologized for taking her side without hearing me out. Next, I posted a detailed, factual account of the situation on social media. I didn't name her directly, but anyone who knew us could connect the dots. I included screenshots of her texts about securing her future and excerpts from the court ruling that discredited her claims. The response was overwhelming. People who had once sympathized with her started reaching out to me, offering apologies and support. Some even cut ties with her altogether. But the real turning point came when her own sister, one of the witnesses from that night with the notary, messaged me. She told me she felt terrible for going along with Elle's plan and wanted to make things right. She offered to testify if it ever came to that again. That was the nail in the coffin for Elle's reputation. Word spread quickly, and her lies unraveled in front of everyone. She tried to play the victim again, but no one was buying it anymore. A few weeks later, I got a letter from her lawyer. It was a desperate attempt at damage control, offering to settle everything if I agreed to sign a non-disclosure agreement and drop any further claims. I declined. I wanted her to face the full weight of her actions, not just for me, but as a lesson that manipulation and entitlement have consequences. My countersuit went forward, and this time, the court awarded me a much larger settlement for damages. The money wasn't the point, though. The real victory was reclaiming my peace of mind and knowing that I had stood up for myself. After the dust settled, I made some changes in my life. I started therapy to work through the anger and betrayal. I also updated my will and other legal documents to ensure my assets would be protected in the future. As for relationships, I've become more cautious. I've learned to trust my instincts and to set firm boundaries from the start. Elle, on the other hand, disappeared from our social circle. I heard through the grapevine that she moved to another city and started over. Looking back, I can see how I missed the warning signs, but I don't regret how I handled the situation in the end. It taught me a lot about resilience, self-worth, and the importance of standing up for what's right. So, if you're ever faced with a similar situation, remember this. Protect yourself, know your worth, and don't let anyone take advantage of your kindness. And seriously, hit that subscribe button. I promise my life isn't always this dramatic, but when it is, you'll want to hear about it.